When the avalanche came, my wife gave her white moonlight, my only thermal blanket. Ethan, give your thermal blanket to Lucas. He's frail and can't hold on much longer. In the 40 below wind and snow, I curled up behind cold rocks, my body heat slipping away bit by bit. My wife, Olivia, stood in front of me and, in an imperious tone that brooked no argument, issued the order. The man behind her, Lucas, was wrapped in her thermal blanket, weakly leaning against the mountainside, a faint, barely noticeable look of triumph in his eyes. I looked at Olivia, the woman I had loved for 5 years and indulged for 5 years, my heart feeling as if it had been frozen. If I give it to him, I'll die. My voice trembled violently from the cold. Olivia's brows knit tightly, her face full of impatience and disappointment. Ethan, how did you get so selfish? We're a team. If anything happened to Lucas, I would never forgive you for the rest of my life. Her words were like an ice pick driving hard into my heart. I smiled in the howling blizzard, smiling until my whole body trembled. In the end, I watched her gently strip from me the only thermal blanket that kept me alive and tenderly drape it over Lucas. In the last moment as my consciousness faded, I saw them holding each other tightly, drawing warmth from one another in the snow. And I, like a discarded dog, in despair and bitter cold, slowly stopped breathing. Honey, wake up, you had a nightmare again. A gentle call sounded in my ear, and a soft hand lightly patted my cheek. I jerked my eyes open. What came into view was Olivia's familiar yet strange face. She was wearing my favorite lace nightgown, a concerned smile on her face. A warm bedroom, a soft big bed, and bright sunlight outside the window. I am back. I was reborn. I returned to the year after I successfully proposed to Olivia the day before we were to travel to the Snow Peak Mountains. I said nothing, just stared at Olivia with all my might. That beautiful face, in my eyes now, was colder than the raging snowstorm from my dreams. It was this very face that in my past life used the gentlest tone to speak the cruelest words. Honey, what's wrong? Why are you staring at me like that? It's kind of scary. Olivia, made uneasy by my gaze, hunched her shoulders. I slowly sat up, feeling warmth and strength flow through my body instead of the cold and weakness of near death. Everything is real. I'm really back. It's nothing, just a nightmare. I withdrew my gaze, my voice calm, without a ripple. Olivia sighed with relief and snuggled into my arms, acting spoiled. See? I told you. You must be exhausted from work lately. Tomorrow we'll go skiing in the Snow Peak Mountains to relax. I've already invited Lucas and Emma. Everyone will go together. It'll definitely be lively. She mentioned that name again. Lucas. Her white moonlight was also the man who, in the previous life, personally shoved me into the abyss. I lowered my eyes, hiding the surging hatred at the bottom of them, but a cold curve lifted the corner of my mouth. All right, go. How can I not go? Some debts have to be collected in person to feel satisfying. Olivia didn't notice anything was off with me and excitedly began planning tomorrow's itinerary, chattering nonstop. By the way, honey, I checked the weather forecast. It says it might get colder up on the mountain. Remember to bring an extra heavy jacket, and also bring the 2 thermal blankets we bought for camping last time, just in case. I sneered inwardly. It was like this in the last life, too. She thoughtfully reminded me to take 2 space blankets. But in the end, those 2 space blankets, one was on her, the other on Lucas. And I had nothing. Fine, whatever you say. I agreed verbally, but inside I was already making new plans. The next morning, as agreed, we met Lucas and Emma at the airport. Emma is Olivia's close friend, a straightforward girl with clear likes and dislikes. In the previous life, after I died, she was the only one who stood up to criticize Olivia and Lucas, and because of that she completely broke ties with Olivia. Seeing me, Emma waved enthusiastically. Ethan! I gave her a slight nod as a response. Lucas, who was standing beside her, wore an air of superiority. When he saw me, he only glanced at me contemptuously before turning his gaze to Olivia at my side. The possessiveness in that look was blatant. Olivia, you look so beautiful today. Lucas's tone was so tender it could squeeze water out of you. A flush instantly rose on Olivia's cheeks. She lowered her head shyly. No way, don't say that. They flirted and bantered as if no one else existed, treating me like air. I watched expressionlessly, feeling nothing in my heart. The scenes that once cut me like a knife now only seemed laughable. On the plane, Olivia and Lucas sat together, sharing the same pair of headphones, their heads leaning against each other, watching some movie I couldn't tell, laughing uproariously. Emma couldn't stand it and sat down beside me, whispering a complaint. Aren't those two being a bit too much? Ethan, aren't you angry? I shook my head and said calmly, there's nothing to be angry about. What right does a man who already has one foot in the grave have to be angry? Emma looked at me with a complicated expression, on the verge of speaking but stopping. I knew what she wanted to say, nothing more than urging me to be magnanimous. But she didn't know that my magnanimity had already been paid for with my life in the last life. In this life, I won't give anyone the chance to hurt me again. The hotel we stayed at was nestled at the foot of the snow-capped mountains, and the room's balcony faced the rolling snowy peaks, an impressive view. After putting down our luggage, Olivia couldn't wait and tugged Lucas off to go skiing. Honey, you rest for a bit. We'll wait for you at the slopes. She said that, then followed Lucas without looking back. I watched their backs, my gaze growing ever colder. I didn't go to rest. Instead, I took out my phone and dialed a number. Hello, is this Mr. Carter? This is Ethan. I'd like to consult about the division of assets in a divorce. Yes, from the moment I was reborn, I had already made up my mind. This ridiculous marriage must come to an end. But before it's over, I need to take back a little interest. After hanging up, I opened the suitcase we had brought. Inside lay a thermal blanket, quietly. That's right, only one. Olivia reminded me to bring two. I only brought one. As for the other one, before I left, I accidentally threw it into the neighborhood trash bin. I took out that single thermal blanket and put it into my backpack. Then I changed into my ski suit and walked out of the hotel. The stage for revenge was already set. Now it was just waiting for the protagonists to appear one by one. The ski resort was buzzing with voices. I spotted Olivia and Lucas at a glance. They looked like two fluttering butterflies, chasing and playing on the snowy trail, drawing many people's glances. I had to admit, standing together, they did look well matched. The man was handsome, the woman beautiful, like a prince and princess from a fairy tale. And I, this inconvenient husband, felt like an ill-timed intruder. Emma sat under the umbrella in the rest area, sulking as she sipped her hot cocoa. When she saw me approach, she immediately waved, Ethan, over here. I sat across from her and ordered a cup of hot coffee. Why aren't you skiing? Emma puckered her lips and gestured toward the pair on the slope. I don't want to move. I answered lightly. Did you have an argument with Olivia? Emma asked cautiously. No. Then you... Emma, I interrupted her, looking straight into her eyes. If one day you discovered that your best friend isn't actually as great as you thought, what would you do? Emma froze, clearly not expecting me to ask such a question. She was silent for a moment before answering seriously. If she only made some harmless little mistakes, I'd advise her. But if she crossed my line and hurt someone I care about, then I would cut her off. I smiled and said nothing. Emma's answer was what I expected. She was the sort of person who clearly distinguished between love and hate. That's also why, in our previous life, she ended up at odds with Olivia to the point of never speaking again for the rest of their lives for my sake. Ethan, you're really acting strange today. Emma frowned, looking at me with concern. Am I? I took a sip of coffee. The scalding liquid slid down my throat and chased away some of the chill. Maybe I just didn't sleep well. As we were talking, Olivia and Lucas finished skiing and walked over, chatting and laughing. Honey, why are you only just here? We've already gone around several times. Olivia's tone carried a hint of complaint. I was a bit tired, so I didn't go. I answered expressionlessly. Lucas took off his gloves, wearing a concerned look, and said to Olivia, Olivia, are you tired? Do you want something to drink? Sure. Olivia smiled sweetly. Lucas immediately went eagerly to buy water. As he passed by me, he didn't forget to deliberately bump me with his shoulder, his eyes full of provocation. I can't even be bothered to lift an eyelid. What is there to argue about with someone who is about to die? Olivia took the water Lucas handed her, twisted off the cap, took a sip herself, and only then handed it to me. Honey, you should drink some too? I looked at the bottle, still bearing the faint impression of her lips. Once I thought that was the sweetest mark in the world. Now I just feel disgusted. No, I'm fine. I'll have coffee. I push her hand away. Olivia's expression stiffened, and she awkwardly withdrew her hand. Seeing this, Lucas immediately fanned the flames from the side. Ethan, what's with that attitude? Olivia kindly brought you water, and you don't appreciate it at all? Do you have any right to comment on my attitude? I lifted my eyes, my gaze shooting at him coldly. Lucas was intimidated by the chill in my eyes and, for a moment, couldn't find any words. Olivia hurriedly smoothed things over. All right. We're all friends here. Don't let a little thing spoil the mood. Let's take the cable car up to the summit and see the view. I heard the scenery at the top is especially beautiful. Great idea. Lucas immediately agreed. I didn't object, because I knew the real show was about to begin. The cable car to the summit was enclosed. Each cabin could hold 4 people. The 4 of us fit perfectly into one cabin. The cable car rose slowly. The ski resort below grew smaller, and the distant snowy peaks glittered with a sacred light in the sun. Olivia and Lucas pressed excitedly against the window, pointing at the scenery outside and constantly exclaiming. Emma, on the other hand, was a bit afraid of heights, her face pale as she gripped the handrail. As for me, I sat quietly, watching the shifting clouds outside the window while my thoughts drifted back to my previous life. It was on that cable car ride that a sudden blizzard trapped us on a mountaintop. And it was on that isolated, helpless peak that the ugliest side of human nature was laid bare. Rumble. With a deafening crash, the cable car jolted violently, then abruptly stopped midway through the air. Everyone in the car let out a cry. What's going on? Olivia asked anxiously. Lucas pretended to be calm as he reassured her. Don't be afraid. It's probably just a small equipment malfunction. It will be fine soon. However, no sooner had he finished speaking than an anxious voice came over the cable car's PA system. Attention all passengers. Due to sudden strong convective weather causing an avalanche, the cable car power system has been interrupted. We are carrying out emergency repairs. Please remain inside the car. Do not panic and await rescue. Avalanche. Power system failure. Those 2 words, like 2 heavy hammers, slammed hard into everyone's hearts. Olivia's face went instantly ashen. Emma also grabbed my arm in fright. Only I remained expressionless. What was coming had, after all, come. Outside the window, the sky darkened visibly. The bright sunlight was blocked by thick clouds. Then pea-sized snowflakes driven by a howling wind hit the cable car glass, pattering with a crackling sound. The temperature dropped sharply. The atmosphere in the carriage dropped to an icy silence. Olivia pressed herself tightly against Lucas, her body trembling uncontrollably. It's so cold, she said, shivering. Lucas took off his coat and draped it over Olivia, soothing her gently. Don't be afraid. I'm here. Olivia gave him a grateful glance, then turned her gaze to me. Husband, are you cold? She asked tentatively. I didn't answer her. I took the only thermal blanket out of my backpack, unfolded it, and draped it over Emma and myself. Emma was freezing too. Feeling the warmth from the blanket, she instinctively leaned closer to me. Olivia's eyes instantly went red. Ethan, what do you mean? She pointed at me, her voice sharp with accusation. Can't you see I'm cold too? Why are you only looking out for yourself and Emma? I lifted my eyes and looked at her coldly. I only brought 1 thermal blanket. 1? Olivia was stunned. Didn't I tell you to bring 2? Forget it. I shrugged off the 2 words. You. Olivia was so angry she couldn't speak, tears welling in her eyes. Lucas, who couldn't stand it, stepped forward to scold me. Ethan, Are you even a man? Olivia is your wife. How can you treat her like this? Even if you only brought one, you should have given it to her first. Because she's my wife, does that mean she has the right to enjoy everything I have and sacrifice everything for me? I retorted with a cold laugh. Isn't that how it should be? Lucas said righteously. As a man, protecting your woman isn't natural and right. And what about you? What are you? My gaze scraped across his face like a knife. By what right do you demand that I protect my woman? Lucas's face instantly flushed the color of raw liver. Of course he knew he had no right. But he had already gotten used to playing the devoted guardian in front of Olivia, used to enjoying Olivia bossing me around while he reaped the benefits. I'm Olivia's friend. Is it wrong for me to care about her? He shouted, loud, but trembling underneath. Care about her? I scoffed. Care about her? And then give her your coat and freeze to death yourself? All right, you already gave her your coat. How noble of you. My words, like a resounding slap, landed hard across Lucas's and Olivia's faces. The ambiguous, sordid thing between the two of them, I tore mercilessly open and exposed in broad daylight. Olivia's face flushed and paled, ashamed and angry. Ethan, do you have to put it so harshly? Harsh. I looked at her and said, word by word, there are harsher things. Want to hear them? You weren't like this before. Olivia finally couldn't hold back her tears. You used to be so good to me. You always listened to me. You always let me have my way. How did you turn into this now? People change. I said lightly. When your heart gets completely broken, you naturally change. Olivia cried even harder. She probably thought I meant her and Lucas's ambiguous relationship had broken my heart. She will never know that I'm talking about the real life that was lost in my previous life. Emma stood to the side, stunned. She looked at me, then at the crying Olivia and the ashen-faced Lucas, clearly not yet understanding the situation. But she wisely chose to remain silent. The wind and snow outside the car grew fiercer. The cable car swayed in the gale as if it could plummet into the abyss at any moment. The temperature inside the carriage kept dropping, and even with the thermal blanket, Emma and I could feel the bone-chilling cold. Lucas, without a coat or blanket, was worse off. His lips had already turned purple, and his body began to tremble uncontrollably. He kept rubbing his arms and breathing out white puffs, but it did no good. Olivia, I'm so cold. He leaned weakly against Olivia, his voice breaking into sobs. Olivia felt unbearably pained. She warmed him with her own body while pleading with her eyes at me. Hubby, I'm begging you, give the thermal blanket to Lucas. He's really about to die. Consider it borrowed, okay? When we get down the mountain, I'll pay you back double. Here we go again. The exact same lines as in the last life. First came the accusations, then the moral coercion, and finally the pleading. Too bad. I'm no longer the fool who would be swayed by a few tears from her. I looked at her, a cruel smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. All right, I agreed. My answer left everyone stunned. Olivia and Lucas's faces instantly lit up with ecstasy. Emma, on the other hand, looked utterly incredulous. She grabbed my arm and asked urgently, Ethan, are you crazy? It's so cold outside. Without that thermal blanket, you'll die. I patted her hand reassuringly, signaling her to stay calm. Then, in front of Olivia and Lucas, I slowly lifted the thermal blanket that was covering me. A bone-deep chill washed over me instantly, and I couldn't help but shiver. Here, I handed the thermal blanket to Olivia. Olivia reached out eagerly, as if it weren't an ordinary blanket, but a life-saving straw. However, just as her fingertips were about to touch the blanket, I abruptly pulled my hand back. Olivia grabbed at nothing. What are you doing? She asked me in bewilderment. I laughed a laugh full of scorn. I said I'd give it to you. I didn't say I'd give it to you for free. What do you want? Olivia asked warily. My gaze landed on the necklace she was wearing around her neck. It was an expensive diamond necklace, the one I had bought for her on our wedding anniversary, spending nearly 3 months' salary. She loved it and wore it almost every day. Use it as payment. I pointed to the necklace. Olivia's expression changed in an instant. No. She instinctively clutched her neck. This is the anniversary gift you gave me. How can I use it to bargain? Oh, I raised an eyebrow. So you still remember it was for me. I thought you'd long since forgotten that you're a married woman. My words were full of mockery, making Olivia's face go pale and then flush. Ethan, don't go too far. Lucas weakly chimed in from the side. Too far. I sneered. Compared to a human life, what's a necklace? Or is it that, in your Olivia's heart, your white moonlight's life is worth less than a necklace? I deliberately emphasized the 3 words white moonlight. Olivia's body shook violently, her face going deathly pale. She stole a glance at Lucas and found him looking at her with a complicated expression. Obviously, my words were like a thorn, piercing that fragile love between them. In the face of a life and death test, even the most beautiful love can become fragile and easily shattered. Olivia hesitated. On one side was the man she loved. On the other, the expensive necklace and its so-called sentimental value. She was caught in a dilemma. Watching her hesitate, I could only find it amusing. In a last life, she did not hesitate to sacrifice my life for Lucas. This life, it was her turn to pay the price, and yet she began to haggle over every little thing. How ironic. Olivia, Lucas's voice grew weaker and weaker. He reached out and grabbed the hem of Olivia's clothes. I feel so bad. I feel like I'm dying. He began to play the martyr. Olivia looked at his pained expression and felt unbearably heartbroken. In the end, she bit her lip as if she'd made up her mind. She lifted her head, eyes bloodshot as she looked at me. Fine, I'll change. As she spoke, her hand trembled as she unfastened the necklace at her throat. When that sparkling diamond necklace landed in my palm, there wasn't a ripple in my heart. I casually slipped it into my pocket, then tossed the thermal blanket to her. Olivia, as if finding a treasure, immediately unfolded the blanket and carefully draped it over Lucas. Lucas, how do you feel? Any better? She asked anxiously. Wrapped in the thermal blanket, Lucas let out a long sigh, and color gradually returned to his face. Much better, Olivia. Thank you. He smiled weakly, then looked at me with a provocative glance, as if to say, see, no matter how unwilling you were, she ultimately chose me. I couldn't be bothered with him and settled back into my seat. Without the thermal blanket, the cold began to invade my body fiercely. Seeing this, Emma immediately took off her coat, intending to put on me. What are you doing? I held her hand down. You gave the blanket to them. You'll freeze to death. Emma was so anxious, she was almost crying. Don't worry, I won't die. I smiled at her, then reached into the compartment of my backpack and took out another thing. It was a palm-sized black device with a red button on it. This was a portable heater I had specially borrowed from a friend who enjoys outdoor activities before I came. As long as you press the button, it can emit heat continuously within a small range. Although not as effective as a thermal blanket, in this environment, it was enough to keep you alive. I pressed the button, and a stream of warmth instantly radiated from the device, driving away the surrounding cold. Emma stared wide-eyed in surprise. Olivia and Lucas across from me also saw what I was holding. Their expressions instantly became incredibly vivid. Especially Olivia. Her complexion shifted from red to white, then from white to greenish, and finally turned ashen. You actually still have this? She pointed at me, her voice trembling. I looked at her, smiling like a devil. Yes, surprising, unexpected. Of course she was surprised. She thought I had given her the only lifeline. She thought she could buy the life of the man she loved with a single necklace. She thought she had made a great sacrifice. But she didn't expect that I was playing her from the very beginning. I had her trade the most precious keepsake for something I didn't need at all. And I came away unscathed. The feeling of being mocked and deceived pushed her to the brink of collapse. Ethan, you liar. You did this on purpose. She screamed, lunging at me like a madwoman, trying to snatch the heater from my hands. I had anticipated it. The moment she lunged, I sidestepped, and she grasped at air. Olivia crashed heavily to the floor, making a dull thud. She lay face down on the cold floor, lifted her head, and looked at me with a gaze steeped in poison, eyes full of resentment and unwillingness. Why are you doing this to me? You clearly have it. Why didn't you take it out earlier? You just want to see me humiliated, don't you? She shouted hysterically. Yes. I looked down at her, not hiding my intention. I just want to see how much your white moonlight is worth to you. Now it seems it's worth no more than a necklace. My words, like a sharp knife, once again stabbed fiercely into her heart. Her body shook violently, and tears fell like beads broken from a string. Give me back my necklace. She struggled to get up from the ground and lunged at me again. This time, before I could move, Emma stepped forward and stood between us. Olivia, that's enough. Emma snapped. Do you have any conscience at all? Who just forced her husband to hand over the life-saving blanket for another man? And now you want to snatch Ethan's other things when you see them? How thick-skinned are you? Emma's words froze Olivia in her tracks. She looked at Emma's disappointed face, then at Lucas beside her whose expression was equally sullen, and finally let her gaze fall on my cold face, realizing at last that she had been abandoned by everyone. She opened her mouth, but couldn't get a word out. Yes, what right did she have to accuse me? From beginning to end, the selfish and self-serving person was herself. Olivia, stop begging him. Lucas said weakly, clutching the thermal blanket around him, his gaze full of resentment as he looked at me. When we get down the mountain, I'll buy you a necklace 100 times better than this. He was still trying to play the role of the devoted man. Unfortunately, Olivia couldn't listen at all now. She sat down in a daze, muttering to herself over and over, "Why is this happening? Why is this happening?" She couldn't understand why the man who had once obeyed her in everything and loved her as his life would suddenly become so cold and heartless. I couldn't be bothered to look at her pitiful expression anymore, so I placed the portable heater between me and Emma, closed my eyes, and began to rest. The rescue would still take some time to arrive. I had to conserve my strength. The carriage fell into a deathly silence. Only the howling wind and snow outside and Olivia's muffled sobs remained. Although Lucas had the thermal blanket, the temperature inside the carriage was so low that he was still shivering from the cold. He tried several times to ask Olivia to share half of the blanket with him, but seeing her in such a distraught state, he swallowed his words. He knew that at a time like this, any request could become the final straw that breaks the camel's back. Time passed second by second, each one stretching as long as a century. My consciousness gradually grew hazy. Despite the heater, the loss of physical strength and the low-temperature environment had pushed my body to its limit. Just as I was about to give out, a buzzing sound grew louder from a distance. It was the rescue team's helicopter. We're saved. Emma shook my arm excitedly. Ethan, do you hear it? It's the helicopter. I forced my eyes open, and through blurred vision, I indeed saw the searchlight flashing in the distant wind and snow. Olivia and Lucas also heard the sound, their faces lighting up with the ecstatic joy of having survived. Soon, a rescuer descended onto the roof of our carriage by rope, and then opened the sunroof. Are the people inside okay? Is anyone injured? The rescuer called out loudly. We're fine, Emma replied excitedly. Ladies first, one at a time. Olivia and Emma were pulled up first. Then it was Lucas. I was the last one. When I was pulled into the helicopter, I glanced back at the little cable car dangling in midair. There, my past was buried, and my rebirth began. On the helicopter, the medical staff immediately examined us. Olivia and Lucas, having been exposed to the cold for a long time, had mild frostbite and hypothermia symptoms and were immediately taken to the hospital. Emma was in the best condition because she had been wearing my coat and had the heater. She was only a bit weak. As for me, although I looked the most disheveled, I was physically unhurt thanks to the portable heater. I saw Olivia again in the hospital corridor. She had just finished tending to her wound, tears still on her face, and rushed over when she saw me. Ethan, we need to talk. Her voice was hoarse. There's nothing to talk about. I stepped around her, ready to leave. Ethan, she wrapped her arms around me from behind, crying and pleading, I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. Please forgive me this once, okay? Let's start over. Go back to how things were before, okay? Return to the way things were. Return to that fool who let her take whatever she wanted and who was ultimately killed by her own hands. I pried her hand apart, turned around, and looked at her coldly. Olivia, let's get a divorce. Divorce? Olivia looked as if struck by lightning, staring at me dazedly, her face written over with disbelief. She probably thought I was just throwing a tantrum this time, that if she acted like before, coquettish, shed a few tears, I would soften and then, as if nothing had happened, go back to being her devoted simp. Unfortunately for her, she miscalculated. What did you say? She asked in a trembling voice, as if trying to confirm she hadn't misheard. I said, we're getting a divorce. I repeated each word clearly. The divorce papers. My lawyer will deliver them to you tomorrow. The house and the car are yours. I only want the portion of the assets that belonged to me before marriage. I loved her so materially, I was willing to give her one last piece of dignity. But our relationship was already dead. It died on that snowy mountain. It died the moment she herself tore the thermal blanket from me. No, I won't agree. Olivia lost control in an instant, shaking her head frantically as tears burst forth. Ethan, you can't do this to me. I love you. I can fix what I did. Please don't leave me. She screamed hoarsely, drawing the sidelong glances of others in the corridor. I looked at her with not an ounce of pity, only overwhelming disgust. Love you? I scoffed. You love me, so you can act all smitten and intimate with your white moonlight right in front of me, without any shame? You love me, so at the brink of life and death, you can save him and habu yir to shi shengwa. Olivia, put away that cheap love of yours. I find it filthy. Every word I spoke was like a knife, peeling away her hypocritical mask layer by layer, revealing the selfish, ugly truth beneath. Her face turned ashen, her body swaying. I didn't mean to. I was just too worried about Lucas. She still tried to defend herself in vain. That's enough. I didn't want to argue with her any longer. You chose the path yourself. Please bear the consequences yourself as well. After saying that, I stopped looking at her and strode away. Ethan. Olivia's cries fell far behind me. Emma came out of the ward and caught up to me. Are you really sure? She asked cautiously. Actually, Olivia, Emma seemed about to say something for Olivia, but the words died on her lips. In the end, she only sighed. Forget it. This is between you two. I shouldn't meddle. But whatever decision you make, I'll support you. Thank you, Emma. I said sincerely. In both lives, Emma is the only one who has stood by me from beginning to end. I keep this affection in my heart. After leaving the hospital, I didn't go home. That house full of memories of Olivia and me now only makes me feel sick. I checked into a hotel near the company. Early the next morning, my lawyer sent the drafted divorce agreement to my email. After confirming everything was correct, I told him to deliver it straight to the house. Having taken care of all that, I felt considerably lighter. It felt as if I had unshackled a heavy chain that had weighed on me for many years. In the afternoon, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Lucas calling. Ethan, you despicable scoundrel. You're actually going to divorce Olivia. As soon as the call connected, Lucas was on the other end berating me. I moved my phone a little farther away and, after he had finished scolding, asked calmly, all done. You. Lucas was provoked by my composure. Olivia loves you so much. Why would you hurt her like this? Do you know she cried all night yesterday? Are you even a man? Whether she cried all night, I don't know. All I know is that she won't be my wife for long. I answered lazily. As for whether I'm a man, that's none of your concern. You should worry more about yourself. What do you mean? There was a note of caution in Lucas's voice. Not a big deal. I smiled. Just reminding you, the wind on the snowy mountain isn't so easy to handle. Be careful you don't leave any after effects that could affect the happiness of the rest of your life. After I hung up, I ended the call. Of course, I knew Lucas was fine. In the previous life, he and Olivia stepped over my corpse and lived happily. I said that just to gross him out. As expected, it wasn't long before I received a message from Emma. Lucas just posted a photo on social media of him getting a full body checkup at the hospital, captioned, "The curses of some people only make me stronger." There was a vomiting emoji after that. I looked at that post and could only laugh. A pompous little clown will always rely on such ridiculous methods to prove his existence. I ignored him and opened another chat window instead. "Mr. Carter, help me look up that design company under Lucas's name, all its tax records and project contracts. I want everything. What happened on the snowy mountain was only the appetizer. The real revenge is only just beginning. I will make that pair of lovers pay the most dreadful price for what they did in their past life. I will make them have nothing left." The following few days were calm and peaceful. Olivia didn't come to see me again, nor did she sign the divorce agreement. She probably still held a sliver of hope, thinking I was sulking. That if she dragged things out long enough, I would soften and turn back. As for Lucas, he jumped around on social media, sometimes posting his chat logs with Olivia, sometimes sharing pointed inspirational posts, desperately trying to craft a victor's image. I watched coldly, unmoved, and simply carried on with my plan step by step. Mr. Carter was very efficient. In less than a week, he had sent over all of Lucas Company's documents. A thick stack of files detailed every illegal and irregular operation Lucas Company had carried out since its founding. Tax evasion, contract fraud, commercial bribery. The list was almost endless. In my previous life, I devoted myself entirely to Olivia and ignored everything outside. I had no idea that Lucas's success was built on such a filthy foundation. This life, I won't let him go free again. I anonymously reported the most crucial pieces of evidence to the tax authorities and the business administration. Then I quietly waited for the show to begin. That day, I was in the office handling paperwork when Emma suddenly burst in, panic-stricken. "Ethan, it's bad. Something happened," she said, her face anxious. "What's wrong?" I put down the pen in my hand and motioned for her to sit and tell me slowly. "It's Olivia. She committed suicide." My pupils constricted sharply. Suicide? That, however, was beyond what I had expected. In her last life, she lived just fine. How did she become so despairing this time? How are things now? I forced myself to stay calm, still fighting for her in the hospital. I heard she cut her wrists. Her mother found her and rushed her there in time. She should not be in life-threatening condition, Emma said, gasping. I breathed a sigh of relief. Although I hate her, I'm not to the point of wanting her dead. I only wanted her to stay alive, to watch with her own eyes how everything she cared about was being destroyed by me bit by bit. Why did she kill herself? I asked. Emma's expression was complicated. I don't know either. What her mother called me, she was crying nonstop, saying it's all your fault, that you drove her to death. Blame me? I snorted. Ethan, I know you hate her, but she's still your wife. Now that this has happened, shouldn't you go to the hospital to see her? Emma suggested cautiously. I fell silent. Go or not go? Reason tells me I shouldn't go. Olivia used such an extreme act as suicide simply to morally blackmail me, to force me to compromise, to force me to forgive. As soon as I went, I fell right into her trap. But images of the times we had been together surfaced uncontrollably in my mind. The girl who used to bring me meals when I worked late, the girl who stayed by my bedside when I was sick, the girl whose eyes were once filled with me, even though those beautiful things ultimately proved to be lies. But they did, after all, truly exist. Sigh. In the end, I sighed. I'll go take a look. Consider it a final tribute to the love we once had and that has died. When Emma and I arrived at the hospital, Olivia's parents were standing by the emergency room door. Seeing me, Olivia's mother came charging over like a maniac, hitting and berating me. Ethan, you murderer. What are you still doing here? It's you. You drove my daughter to her death. If anything happens to my daughter, I will haunt you even as a ghost. She cried and shouted hysterically, drawing countless watching eyes. I didn't fight back, nor did I argue. I simply let her fists fall on me. I knew that at this moment, any explanation would be pointless. In their eyes, I was the culprit who drove their daughter to her death. Emma pulled desperately at my side, but Olivia's mother was too agitated to be restrained, until the doctor came out of the emergency room. Who is the patient's family? Doctor. How is my daughter? Olivia's mother rushed over at once. The patient is out of life-threatening danger, but she lost a lot of blood and needs to be hospitalized for observation for a while. The doctor paused, then added, however, the patient's emotions are very unstable. You family members need to talk to her more and must not let her be upset again. Hearing that her daughter was okay, Olivia's mother breathed a sigh of relief, then shot me a resentful glare. Did you hear? The doctor said you can't provoke her anymore. Get out of here. My daughter doesn't want to see you. I ignored her and, through the crack of the emergency room door, glanced at Olivia lying on the hospital bed. Her face was as pale as paper, her wrist wrapped in thick bandages, and she looked so fragile it seemed she would shatter at the slightest touch. Seeing her like this, I felt no trace of satisfaction. Instead, an indescribable irritation rose up in me. Just then, a familiar figure hurried over. It was Lucas. When he saw Olivia on the hospital bed, his face instantly filled with pain and anger. He rushed up to me and grabbed my collar. Ethan, are you satisfied? Forcing Olivia to this point, are you proud of yourself? I coldly pushed his hand aside and smoothed the collar of my shirt that he'd must. Mr. Bennett, make no mistake, she chose to go down that path herself. I didn't force her. Nonsense, Lucas shouted. If you hadn't insisted on divorcing her, would she have lost her mind? You cold-blooded, heartless bastard. Me, cold-blooded and heartless? I said as if I'd heard the most ridiculous joke. And what about the person who could stand by and watch her husband die all for the sake of your white moonlight? What does that make them? Deeply devoted and honorable. My words made Lucas's face go stiff. He probably didn't expect that I would tell everyone present about what happened on the snowy mountain. The onlookers around us began whispering. The way they looked at Olivia's family turned odd. Olivia's mother sensed trouble and rushed forward, pointing at my nose as she yelled, "What nonsense are you talking? My daughter is not that kind of person. It's you. You must have done something to wrong my daughter, and now you're trying to turn it around on her." Exactly. Lucas immediately caught on and chimed in, "Don't listen to his nonsense. He's just making excuses for himself. He was the one who changed, who stopped loving Olivia, and now he wants to throw dirt on Olivia." They echoed each other, trying to pin all the blame on me and paint themselves as innocent victims. How ridiculous. I couldn't be bothered to argue with them anymore. The truth of the matter would soon be revealed. Say whatever you want. I dropped those words and turned to leave. Ethan, stop. Olivia's mother screamed from behind. I didn't look back. Emma hurried after me, her face full of worry. Ethan, are you okay? I'm fine. I shook my head. So where are we going now? Go home. Back at the hotel, I took a shower, changed clothes, and washed away all the bad luck that had settled on me. Then I opened my laptop and began to deal with work. It was as if everything that had just happened at the hospital had nothing to do with me. Emma watched me from the side, hesitating to speak. She probably thought I was too cold. But I knew that with someone like Olivia, any softness would be cruelty to myself. She used suicide to win sympathy and force me to compromise. If I truly compromised, what would await me would be an endless abyss. I won't be fooled again. The next day, a bombshell of news exploded through her circle. Lucas's design firm was placed under investigation by the authorities for suspected tax evasion and multiple counts of commercial fraud. The company's accounts were frozen, and all projects were halted. Lucas himself was taken away for questioning. The news hit like a depth charge, catching everyone off guard. It's worth noting that Lucas's company had been thriving not long ago, hailed as a dark horse in the industry. How did it just collapse? No one could make sense of it. Only I knew that this was all just the beginning. When Emma saw the news, she opened her mouth in shock. Oh my God, how could Lucas's company? She instinctively looked at me. Ethan, did you do this? I neither admitted nor denied it. I just smiled faintly. Emma was sharp and immediately understood. She looked at me, her eyes full of complex emotions. There was shock, admiration, and also a trace of fear. She probably hadn't expected that Ethan, who usually seemed gentle and even a bit frail, would have such thunderous methods. You did this for myself. I cut her off. I'm just taking back what was rightfully mine and, while I'm at it, clearing away some trash. When Lucas's company collapsed, no one was more anxious than Olivia. I heard that after she learned the news, she ignored the doctor's advice, forcibly checked herself out of the hospital, and then frantically made calls everywhere, pulling strings trying to get Lucas out. Unfortunately, she forgot that all her connections and influence were built on her status as my wife, Ethan's. By now, the news that we were about to divorce had long since spread throughout the whole circle. Who would risk offending me for a woman who was about to be discarded? Olivia had nowhere else to turn. In the end, she thought of me. That night, she found me at the hotel where I was staying. She looked even more haggard than she had at the hospital. Her once beautiful face was marked by exhaustion and despair. She didn't cry, and she didn't make a scene. She just stared at me with a pair of bloodshot eyes. You did it, didn't you? Her voice was hoarse, as if sandpaper had been run across it. Yes, I did not deny it. Upon receiving my affirmative answer, Olivia's body wavered, and she almost fell. She leaned against the wall, forcing a bitter smile. Why, Ethan, why are you being so cruel? Even if there are many misunderstandings between us, Lucas is innocent. Innocent. I felt as if I were hearing the biggest joke. Olivia, do you still think he's innocent? He evaded taxes, committed contract fraud. Those are consequences of his own actions. I merely gave him a chance to accept punishment. No, it's not like that. Olivia shook her head frantically. He must have been framed by you. You did it. You forged the evidence. You destroyed him. By this point, she was still stubbornly unrepentant. She still thought her shining ideal was flawless. I looked at her, feeling nothing but pity and amusement. Think whatever you want. I didn't want to argue with her anymore. If you came today to plead for him, you can leave. I won't help him, never. Ethan. Olivia suddenly dropped to her knees, clutching my leg, begging desperately. I beg you, please spare Lucas. If you let him go, I'll do anything. I'll sign the divorce papers right now. I'll leave with nothing. I'll give you everything I own. Just please have mercy and spare him. Seeing the woman kneeling on the ground, pleading miserably, I felt not the slightest stir in my heart. I slowly crouched down to meet her eye level, a cruel curve tugging at the corner of my mouth. Do you think I'm after the little things you have? What I wanted was never your possessions. What I wanted was to make you watch with your own eyes how the person you care about most, the love you cherish above all, is dissolved before you, bit by bit, turning into nothing, ashes, and smoke. I want you to taste the kind of despair I tasted in my past life. My voice was very soft, but like a heavy hammer, it struck hard against Olivia's heart. She stared at me blankly, her pupils dilating continuously from fear. Last life? What are you saying? Olivia looked at me in terror, as if she were looking at a demon crawling out of hell. Why? Who are you really? She asked in a trembling voice. I laughed with indescribable exhilaration. Who am I? I'm the Ethan you stripped of his thermal blanket with your own hands on the mountain, leaving to freeze to death. My dear wife, have you forgotten? My words blew through Olivia's mind like a thunderclap. Her face had lost all color, her body trembling like a leaf in the wind. No, impossible, this can't be. She muttered incoherently. You're lying. You must be crazy. Me crazy. I grabbed her chin, forcing her to look into my eyes. Then look closely. Isn't this face the one you know best? Isn't this scar on me from when I was cut by glass saving you? And your necklace. Do you think that's why I wanted your necklace? Because it's the thing you value most. I wanted you to trade what you cherish most for a chance you thought would save his life, and then to make you realize that all of this was just a game I was playing. I will make you taste what it feels like to be betrayed and mocked by the person you trust most. Each of my words was like a poison blade, cruelly lacerating her nerves. She looked at the undisguised hatred in my eyes and finally realized that what I was saying was true. The Ethan who loved her as his life really was dead. Now, standing in front of her was an avenger returned from hell. Ah! Olivia let out a piercing scream, shoved me away, and scrambled out, tumbling as she ran. She ran so fast, so disheveled, as if a flood of beasts were chasing her from behind. I watched her vanish at the end of the corridor, the smile at the corner of my mouth growing ever colder. Olivia, don't be anxious. This has only just begun. The matter with Lucas reached a conclusion quickly. Because the evidence was conclusive, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison and fined millions of dollars. The company under his name also announced bankruptcy and liquidation. The once immensely successful young talent was reduced to a prisoner overnight. This news completely broke Olivia. She shut herself at home, seeing no one and answering no calls. Her parents, worried she might do something foolish again, stayed by her side without leaving. As for me, it was at this time that I filed for divorce in court. Because Olivia kept refusing to sign the papers, I had no choice but to end our ridiculous marriage through legal channels. On the day of the hearing, Olivia did not appear. Her lawyer read her wishes aloud in court. She did not agree to a divorce. Her reason was that she still had feelings for me. She believed that what happened between us was just some misunderstandings, and that if we communicated clearly, we could return to how things were before. How ridiculous! At that point, she still deluded herself into thinking we could go back to the past. I submitted evidence of Olivia's infidelity in court, including the intimate photos of her and Lucas on the mountain cable car and their suggestive chat logs. This evidence is enough to prove that our relationship has completely broken down. The judge ultimately accepted my claim and ruled that we should divorce. The moment I received the judgment, I felt the enormous rock that had been pressing on my chest for years finally lifted. I was free. After finishing the divorce formalities, I began to clean out the things Olivia had left in our so-called home. I packed all her clothes, jewelry, and cosmetics and sent them to her parents' house. Then I hired a renovation company and had the entire house redone from top to bottom. I wanted to erase every trace of her, to let this house completely say goodbye to the past and welcome a new life. Just as the renovation was nearly finished, I received a call from Emma. "Ethan, are you free? I'd like to take you out to dinner." Her voice sounded a bit hesitant. Of course, I agreed readily. Ever since the avalanche incident, my contact with Emma has decreased a lot. I know it's hard for her, caught between Olivia and me. I don't want to put her in a difficult position. We arranged to meet at a quiet Western restaurant. Emma looked much thinner and much more haggard. "How have you been lately?" I asked first. "Not great." Emma gave a bitter smile. "Olivia, her mental state is terrible. She was sent back to the hospital a few days ago. The doctors say she has severe depression and persecutory delusions. She keeps feeling like someone wants to harm her." My movements froze for a moment, then returned to normal. "Is that so?" "Ethan," Emma looked at me, her expression complicated. "I know I have no right to say this, but could you let her go? She's already received the punishment she deserved. Let her go." I put down my knife and fork and looked at Emma, asking seriously, "Emma, if I told you that on the snowy mountain, if I hadn't had that portable heater, I would have died, would you still think the punishment she is now is enough?" Emma was stunned. She probably thought I was just acting, deliberately teasing Olivia. She never imagined it was a real life or death test. She opened her mouth, but couldn't get the words out. "The reason I told you this isn't to have you judge who's right or wrong," I continued. "I only want you to know that everything I did wasn't for revenge, but to seek justice. She owed me a life, and I didn't make her pay with her life. I only made her lose what she cared about most. Is that too much?" Emma fell silent. After a long pause, she picked up her wine glass and said to me, "I'm sorry, Ethan. I was speaking without feeling the pain. I'll punish myself with a drink." After saying that, she drained the red wine in her glass. I looked at her, smiled, and lifted my glass as well. Some things don't need to be spelled out. Those who understand will naturally understand. After that meal, my relationship with Emma actually grew closer than before. She no longer tried to persuade me, nor did she speak up for Olivia. She simply stayed by my side silently, listened to me confide, drank with me, and when I needed it, gave me a warm hug. I knew she was a kind girl. She sympathized with Olivia's ordeal, but she felt more sorrow for my past. With her company, the gloom in my heart gradually dissipated. I began to reorganize my life. I sold the newly renovated house, and, with that money, together with Emma, opened a company of our own. The company was small, but we were both full of energy. We ran the business together, met clients together, pulled all-nighters together, and worked hard toward a shared goal. That grounded feeling made me feel incredibly at ease. Time flew by. A year had gone by in the blink of an eye. Our company, thanks to our joint efforts, gradually got on track, and the business grew bigger and bigger. Emma and I, from initial partners, became confidants who could talk about anything. Afterward, as if by natural course, we came together. On the day I proposed to her, she cried like a child. She said, "Ethan, do you know? Actually, I've liked you for a long time. It's just that back then, you were Olivia's boyfriend, and I could only keep this affection hidden in my heart." I held her, my heart full of gratitude. Thank heaven that after enduring so much hardship, I was still able to meet such a wonderful girl. Our wedding was held very low-key. We only invited a few close friends. At the wedding, watching Emma in her pure white wedding dress, smiling like a blossoming flower, I felt as if I owned the whole world. I thought my life would continue to be this happy forever. Until that day, I received a call from the prison. It was Lucas calling. "Ethan, I'm about to get out." His voice sounded eerily calm. "Really? Congratulations." I replied indifferently. Because he behaved well in prison, he received a reduced sentence. "The first thing I'll do when I get out is come find you," he continued. "You ruined everything for me. We'll settle this debt properly. I'm waiting." I showed not a shred of fear. After hanging up, I looked out at the clear sky, and my gaze gradually turned cold. Some people will never learn to reflect on themselves. They only blame others for their own failures. For such people, any kindness is superfluous. A month later, Lucas was released from prison. He didn't come to look for me, nor did he go looking for Olivia. He vanished, as if evaporated from the world, disappearing without a trace. I tightened security and had bodyguards protect Emma around the clock. I couldn't let the tragedy of the last life replay itself. However, Lucas's target did not seem to be us. A week later, an explosive piece of news shocked everyone again. Olivia's parents were found dead in their home. Both had been stabbed through the heart with a sharp weapon, killed with a single blow. There were no fingerprints or traces left at the scene. The only clue was a line written on the wall in blood. "Traitor must be executed." Everyone knew this was Lucas's revenge. He was retaliating against Olivia's betrayal. Because when he needed help the most, Olivia did not choose to stand by him. Olivia had completely lost her mind. At her parents' funeral, she wore a red dress, crying and laughing, repeatedly shouting, "Karma. It's all karma." After that, no one ever saw her again. Some said she was sent to a psychiatric hospital. Others said she jumped into the sea. But in any case, this woman who had once been proud like a princess ultimately exited the stage of my life in the most tragic way. 6 months later, the police found Lucas's body at an abandoned dock. He died at the hands of his family's enemies, stabbed multiple times, his death a miserable spectacle. With that, all the nightmares that had haunted me in my previous life came to an end. I stood on the balcony, watching the myriad lights of the city in the distance, and Emma gently embraced me from behind. "It's all over," she said, her voice gentle and resolute. "Yeah, it's all over." I turned around, pulled her in my arms, and lowered my head to kiss her lips.